Am I the prick for leaving my family inheritance to my best friend and not the relatives? I, 23 female, don't have any close relatives anymore. I never knew my father or his side of the family, and my maternal side had some major drama that happened before I was even born, causing my mother to cut all contact except for my grandmother and 2 nephews. I don't know what happened, and now it's too late to ask. My grandmother died 10+ years ago, and my aunt and those 2 nephews died as well 7 years ago in a terrible car crash. 3 years ago, my mother died in an accident, leaving me practically alone. As her sole heir, I inherited everything besides other things, a townhouse in the countryside, which was passed down from the grandmother. It's a beautiful house with a big garden that was in the family for some generations as far as I know. It requires some repairs, and I'm slowly working on that. But in the years after my mother's death, I've been struggling a lot with the concept of mortality and the suddenness of it. In my country, if after the death of an individual, no relative claims the inheritance, it would all go to the state. I would hate this house to disappear into nothingness, and therefore I decided to draw up a will and leave it to my best friend. We've talked about it, and she is cool with it, saying that she doesn't care if she is in the will or not, but if this gesture gives me a peace of mind, then she's glad to help. At the time of drawing up the will, I truly thought I was alone, and no other relatives knew about me or cared. Recently, my grandaunt, grandmother's sister, reached out to me. I was vaguely aware that sometime before my mother's death, she was in contact with my mother, like a simple call once a month. Maybe my maternal side was trying to mend bridges. I never cared and never asked. My grandaunt is actually pretty nice if a bit old-fashioned in her beliefs. I discovered that I actually have a lot of distant relatives, but almost all of them live someplace away or another. A couple of days ago, we were talking, and it turned into quite an emotional conversation, and the townhouse came up. My grandaunt asked me what I was planning to do with it, and I, distraught with emotions, stupidly let it slip that it's in my will to go to my best friend. My grandaunt instantly blew up at me, saying that I have no right to give out a family house to some stranger. I was a prick to do so, and my mother would be ashamed of me. Why give it out to someone when I have so many relatives and so on? I started crying and hung up on her. Since then, I'm ignoring all her calls and messages. Was I really a prick to do so? I'm starting to doubt my decision. It's not like I can't change my will if I want to, but I don't really know any of my relatives, and my best friend was my rock ever since my mother died. I feel like she is more my family than any of them. Am I the prick for not telling my dad he has a grandchild? Dad is a diagnosed narcissist. Growing up, he treated me as an extension of himself. He would regularly criticize my weight, my appearance, and made fun of me from the time I hit puberty onwards. He also offered to pay for cosmetic surgery more than once, nose job and fillers, which, as a teenager who was already struggling with self-esteem, didn't exactly make me feel better. There was other stuff too, but that was the most common issue he had with me. It wasn't until I went to university that I began to feel better, figured out who I was without his influence, and began to stand up to him more. When he realized I wasn't putting up with his shit anymore, he got in touch less and less until it got to where it is today, when I have not spoken to him since 2018, despite living less than 3 hours drive from him and him having all my contact info, and I've not had so much as a call on my birthday since I was 21. I'm 29 now, approximately 4 months pregnant and newly engaged. We told my mom and she was happy for us, but she asked what Dad said. They divorced a few years ago. I told her I didn't know what he thought because we hadn't told him. Mom immediately says that we have to tell him. He can't not know about his first grandchild. I tell her that I've had more interaction with my high school bully in the last 5 years than I've had with Dad, and he's never even met the father, my future husband. Mom says she won't tell him and she won't force me, but she really strongly believes I should tell Dad because he has a right to know. Am I the prick for not telling him? Am I the prick if I ignore the request to send this photo? My daughter had a religious naming ceremony a few months ago at her first birthday party, which was at a restaurant, with roughly 70 adults in attendance. We hired a cantor who has conducted religious ceremonies for my husband's family in the past to lead the ceremony. Everything was going fine until he deviated from the ceremony script he shared with us and whipped out a children's book which he began to tell everyone was written by his daughter. At first, he said it was his gift to our daughter, and he gifts each child a book during these ceremonies, but then he proceeded to tell everyone that they can also buy it on Amazon, and details about who the book was about, the name of the author, etc. Then, he essentially stopped the ceremony so our photographer could get photos of him with us and our daughter, and the book so his daughter could advertise her book on her website. Needless to say, I was pissed off that he did this without any warning or asking us in advance. 2 seconds ago, I was tearing up speaking about how my daughter is named after my late grandfather, and now we're suddenly advertising his daughter's children's book. But we smiled for the photo and played it cool in front of our guests. After the photo, the ceremony continued. He has since reached out multiple times, texting my husband and leaving me a voicemail asking for the photo. My husband doesn't care much either way about sending the photos, but agrees it was inappropriate to suddenly turn our ceremony into an opportunity to advertise his daughter's book. He's left it in my court, and so far I'm ignoring all communications and not sending the photo. Is there another side to this? I also understand he's also a father trying to support his daughter's endeavors. Am I being petty? Am I really a prick for refusing to share the photo?